Good evening, cabin crew and listeners of Mrs. Spooky Obsessed, 1-0 and Haunts podcasts. I'm Farah, the daring host of the Conversation Cabin podcast. Joining me are my friends and fellow podcasters, Vicky, Courtney, and Amanda. And we're so stoked that you can join us for this live event. The Paranormal Project presents Tuesday Top Terror, the Virginia City Chronicles. Tonight, we're going to take you all on a thrilling exploration of the historic city of Virginia City, Nevada, known for its rich history and haunting tales. Virginia City has long been a hotbed of paranormal activity, with numerous buildings and locations said to be home to resident ghosts. We're going to bring you on the journey with us as we dive into the eerie world of Virginia City's history, their haunted buildings, and their ghostly inhabitants. Each one of us has been assigned one of the haunting hotels, and we'll be bringing you the origins of the hotel, what part it played in the city, and the paranormal activity that has been reported in these locations. With our unique blend of humor, skepticism, and open-mindedness, we'll take you on this adventure and explore the mysteries that lie beneath the surface. So, without further ado, let me introduce you to Vicky from Mrs. Spooky Obsessed.
My name is Vicky of the Mrs. Spooky Obsessed, and my topic is about the Silver Queen Hotel. So, the Silver Queen Hotel is located in the National Historic District in Nevada borders. The legendary Silver Queen Hotel in Virginia City can be dated all the way back to 1876 and is said to be one of the most haunted places on the Comstock. Located in the heart of historic C Street, the Silver Queen Hotel is not just one of the most haunted hotels in Virginia City, but one of the most haunted hotels in all of Nevada, as well as being the oldest running hotel that still has business today. This antiquated hotel is where you can actually view hundreds of miles of surroundings, and it has a saloon with the original bar sitting right beneath a 15-foot tall portrait of a lady in a dress decorated with exactly 3,261 silver dollars. And it has a ghostly visit by a woman named Rosie, who is also better known as the Lady of the Night, as she always appears in the main staircase and shows up in room 11. Now, what inspired the name the Silver Queen? Well, Virginia City is known as the Queen of the Comstock for various and obvious reasons. This hotel is named after the portrait lady dressed in Comstock silver coins known as the Silver Queen, right? Hence given the name the Silver Queen Hotel. But let me not forget, the hotel also has a wedding chapel included. This chapel is known to offer old-time Wild West ceremonies. And while at it, let me give you a fun fact about about that chapel. The room where the wedding chapel is located was once used as a morgue during the times when the ground was too cold to bury the dead.
Y'all,
Best of all,
I'm going to sound very weird right now, but I recently got married in November, and I feel like I missed the mark. I love every part of that. That's amazing.
Awesome. So best of all, paranormal investigators are allowed to spend the night and do their nightly investigations. Like, it's like the owners of the hotel, they want you to be there. They want you to do your paranormal investigations if you become that curious. So the miners of Virginia City are known to have discovered silver the size of football fields during the Comstock lode era. This is listed as one of the biggest discoveries of silver ever found Because of this silver, it basically funded the entire Western civilization of the United States. This helped in the expansion of rail lines, and although it became one of the most visited places by both U.S. and citizens of other countries around the world, it was also considered to be one of the most dangerous. It is said these areas had many accidents, such as town demolishing fires, mining accidents, and of course, it wouldn't be a growing city, or at least complete. A city wouldn't be complete if there wasn't murder involved, right? Right.
Oh, definitely. There's a lot of murders there in
sure.
Virginia City. Goodness.
For sure, yes. So the Comstock Lode, just to give you a background history on that real quick, the Comstock Lode is the discovery of silver ore in 1859, located under the eastern slope of Mount Davidson in Virginia City, which was named the Utah Territory at that time and was in fact named after this man, Henry Comstock. The discovery of silver happened just 10 years after the gold rush, and people were now in excitement for the silver rush. People who mined and camped within the vicinity in a few years built bustling commercial centers. However, mining declined in 1874. It wasn't exactly long-lived. Now, let's talk about the ghost of Rosie, who haunts the hotel on the daily. Like, she doesn't really have a specific schedule. She's there every day making her presence known.
I've watched many investigations, and she is definitely there, Vicky. She's definitely there.
Super, yeah. I don't want to say, I mean, she's obviously an intelligent spirit, but she's like knowing. She's cognizant that she is no longer in her human form, if that makes sense.
Oh, so, it totally makes sense.
Yeah. It makes sense as to why she's like active as she is.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I thought her story was pretty interesting, but there's like still a lot of holes to it. So from the time she was alive, she was known as a prostitute who did a lot of her business in the Silver Queen. But her story is such a mystery that is so incomplete. It is said that she committed suicide in the late 1800s, and no one knows exactly why she took her own life. There's not much evidence found as to how she died, and so the simple conclusion to her death was that she was found already dead in the bathtub of room 11. She is very much a permanent resident. Like, she is definitely not checking out anytime soon. So the story behind her haunting is that she is known to knock on doors of hotel guests, predominantly known to those being rented by men. So sorry, ladies. As well as other hotel guests waking up in the middle of the night by rattling doorknobs and loud walking footsteps on wooden floors. Now, let me tell you something about that. The strange thing about this last part that I just mentioned is that the entirety of the hotel is carpeted, right? So where are these wooden footsteps coming from? And whose heavy feet do they belong to? So specks of orbs and full-size apparitions have been caught on cameras, as well as voices and whispers caught in recordings. Apparitions of Rosie have also been spotted at the top of this staircase where she is seen lingering. There is another ghost who also haunts the hotel named Annie. Some say she is the source of footsteps, disembodied voices, and the tapping sounds that occur constantly in the hotel. But do you want to know something bizarre about all of this?
Yeah.
There's literally no proof that either Annie or Rosie ever actually existed.
Ooh, my favorite kind of ghost story, one with holes.
For real, I was like, what? And if that is the case, then who's been haunting the hotel this entire time? Is it really female? Or is it something more sinister, like demonic? So there have been several hit reality ghost hunting TV shows that are known to have made their appearances to conduct their paranormal investigations. And the most famous out of all of them would be the main man from Ghost Adventures, Zach Baggins. He and his team not only visited the hotel once, but twice. They say Rosie's presence is so popular that Zach himself caught a ghost on camera while there, and he truly believes with all of his being that it is the spirit of Rosie herself. Now, the good thing about this hotel is that you are more than welcome to give a call to the front desk and ask to spend the night to do your investigation at room 11, and as well as room 13, which is said to be the most active of all of the hotel rooms. If you become curious to ask, you can call the number at 775-847-0440. Just in case, if you're curious.
I will be calling them.
And and honestly, the owners of the hotel, they did it right. They thought of everything for you, and there is nothing about the hotel that has changed. If you ever visit, you are literally walking in the past. The only thing that may be different is just the restoration of the hotel rooms and the flooring where carpet is placed. But aside from it, everything stayed the same. Exactly as you see the hotel through photos online is how it was first built in 1876.
I think that's great. I'm sorry
Yeah?
to interrupt, Vicky, but I love looking at all the Silver Queen, the Gold Hill, Mackey Mansion, to still have a town that was so booming and broke boundaries back in the day for the silver rush. It's
Mm-hmm.
awesome to see that they're keeping it as original as they possibly can. Of course, you have to fix floors and walls and things like that,
Right?
but it's awesome to know that they're leaving those there for those resident ghosts, because Rosie, she is there. I've seen more than just Ghost Adventures. I know that Twin Paranormal, which is a group, paranormal investigators, that's on YouTube. They've gone there a few times, and what they did this past time was they rented both of those rooms out. I think you said it was 11 and 13.
Yes, ma'am. And I'm about to
Okay.
actually bring them up myself.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the last time they went there, they opened up both of the doors so they could hear things coming in and out from both hotel rooms, and they sat
Mm-hmm.
in the tub. Everybody that goes to the Silver Queen sits in that tub to kind of connect with Rosie, because it said that she slit her wrist. I personally think so many prostitutes, being that they were the ladies of the night for the miners, many
Yeah.
of them fell in love with the miners, and many of the miners died, or they made enough money and they went back to their families, like their wives and their kids. And I know that a lot of the prostitutes' hearts got very broken. And I personally think that's why, if she did commit suicide, that's why she committed suicide.
I mean, of course, yeah. I mean, you're only human, and I mean, you allow yourself to open up to someone else. It is kind of hard for any girl to just be like, oh no, it's just for the sex and that's it. Like,
Exactly, because
yeah,
those guys had a favorite. They
yeah.
would go to the same one because it was their favorite. They would create a bond, you know what I mean? So it's a sad story, it is. But go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. So, if in case you visit the website called silverqueenhotel.net, you will discover that they display images of the Whitechapel ready for you to get married. Prices can range from $500 to nearly $800 if you're interested. But if you're into the antiques, you can browse their section of old vintage items. You even get to experience the bar in its original state with the portrait of the Silver Queen herself staring right back at you. And to top it off, like I said earlier, you get to do a little bit of ghost hunting. For each room you want to check into, it is not the same price for all. Some rooms can be as low as $70, while others can go as $145, right? With pictures displayed on the website, you can tell that they are very like tiny rooms, like not like the hotel rooms we have today that, that has space. These rooms look so small and limited, but it looks like it's got the cozy feel of grandmother's house because of this vintage style each and every room has. So yeah, and they all have a different design. None of them look the same. Lastly, and getting to what you were just mentioning, Farah, I found a video on YouTube uploaded by two brothers called the Twin Paranormal, who investigated and asked Rosie a series of questions as to how or why she committed suicide. And a lot of the recordings they caught were like knocking, tapping, laughing, whispers, and a lot of broken sentences that sounded like she may have actually been murdered in some sense. Like, it's possible that she may have been choked to death and then was placed in the tub where it could look like she committed suicide. And I say this because those were the words that these guys caught in their recordings. And if that is the case, well, you know what? Success. For over 100 years, people had assumed Rosie took her own life when she may have, in fact, had her life taken away from her, possibly by a man named Logan, because that was a name they did catch. But unfortunately, there was extremely limited information about him. Like, I couldn't find enough. And whether he may actually have committed murder or not, he somehow plays a part in Rosie's life.
I wonder.
Thus, it may be.
Sorry, not to interrupt, but kind of going back to what Farah said, I wonder if maybe this man was possibly somebody that Logan was like, or not Logan, but Rosie was in love with. And when he left, maybe that's what triggered her to unfortunately end her own life.
It could be. Yeah.
I feel like that might be possible. I'm not entirely sure, but it just seems telling.
Or Vicky, what she just said about how she could have been placed in the tub, maybe because there's been other stories to come out of Virginia City where the women have became pregnant.
I was going to say the same thing.
There you go.
And the guys weren't for it because either A, it was a prominent man in Virginia City, so of course they wouldn't want to be related to a prostitute because they were wealthy businessmen or entrepreneurs, or the minors died, or the minor didn't want the baby because because most of the minors that came there, they left their families back at their homestead. So they had a family, they just weren't there in Virginia City. They came there to do their work for a few months or a year, whatever it was, and then take back money to their homestead. Maybe Rosie became pregnant because there is another story from Virginia City where the girl was pregnant and she was killed because she was pregnant. But it was like a wealthy businessman for that one. But maybe it could have been a minor.
It could have been. I mean, there's so many theories as to how this whole thing went down. There's no pinpoint exact story. That's why I mentioned earlier, her story is such a mystery that there's a lot of holes into it, because I myself couldn't even find, a background story of Rosie. Thus, it may be why Rosie is still lingering in the hotel, because she died in vain. And although I said there is no proof that Rosie may have been a real person, someone is still responding back to the questions people have about her life, or someone's life for that matter. Somebody died there for sure. The question is it really Rosie, or is it someone else?
Can I chime in here just with a theory? I talk about this a lot on my podcast, but it's essentially a theory that states no matter how haunted or not haunted this place is, if enough people believe that a specific haunting is true and factual, regardless of whether or not it's actually true, you can actually manifest a haunting there that falls in line with the activity.
That's true.
I've heard that same thing too, Courtney. Yep. And actually, real quick, on Discovery Plus, the show Kindred Spirits, Adam and Amy did a experiment on that. There was, like, long story short, there was a zombie boy is what he was called, that he was haunting this one place. But what they did was they went upstairs and sat in the room where the zombie boy always speaks on EVP recorders. And they started saying, oh yeah, zombie boy, his mom was this name and the dad was this name. And then they came back the next night. And then when they asked those questions, those names were coming up. So, like, it was weird that you can manifest what you want out in reality and it conjures itself somehow. I don't know how, but it
Right. And
does, or it
it's
can.
kind of like
No, it's true. I mean, that's how poltergeists even happen.
exactly. That's what I was going to say. That's literally what a poltergeist is. It's the manifestation of your own like residual paranormal activity. So, not to say that Rosie didn't exist in a human form, because she very well could have. Obviously, back in those days, there was like very, very lax, if any, record keeping. So, I wouldn't be surprised if she was a real person who had an untimely end. But it's just an interesting thought.
Yeah, I mean, I like that. I mean, the last thing I was going to say is, or ask, why are certain internet sources claiming Rosie is made up to give a people run for their money while others say she is real? I mean, what do you guys believe? Do you think Rosie is actually a real prostitute, or someone's just using her name on purpose?
So, if I can, I didn't want to bring this up immediately because I don't want to spoil anything for future episodes and I'm not going to go in detail. But doing my research on my assigned hotel, which only lies down the street from yours, Vicky, I came across dozens of reports of people who witnessed a spirit named Rosie who was a prostitute sometime in the 1800s. So, it's very interesting to me that her story basically originated at the Silver Queen. And it's so wild that, like, I don't know, that they can just like walk down the street and pop in somewhere else. Like, the relevance of that also, you know, like being a spot where she frequents leads me to believe that it is real, because how weird would it be that both hotels would have a legend about a woman named Rosie who was a sex worker?
Right.
That's
Right,
quite
and you know
interesting.
what? You have to think about it. There were thousands of minors. Those hotels and those saloons were made for the miners to have something to do after a long 16-hour shift,
Exactly.
in dirt and dampness and fires and being away from their family or whatever their situation was. So, imagine thousands of minors equals hundreds to thousands of prostitutes. That's where those girls made their money. If they didn't have a family, if they were single and didn't fall into the, oh, I need to do the stereotypical have a man on a farm and he goes and mines for a year and have 6 kids. These were independent, strong women back in the day, and yes, they were sex workers, but they were smart. That's where the money was, because the miners made good money and they would always go to a saloon, drink, and who was there when they turned around and they stole? A worker. So the fact that there were hundreds to thousands of prostitutes, there has to have been one that was named Rosie.
Of course. And of course, like, silver was even discovered. So there must have been not just only miners, but, you know, other people from like possibly surrounding states also coming to this area, Virginia City in particular. Or why else would Virginia have like this sort of like vibration to like have a like a good haunting? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And kind of going back to what Amanda said earlier, I watched a video when I was just doing research for like the general like city, like Virginia City. And I forget who brought it up where I watched this, and I'll have to go back and look, but somebody mentioned that spirits from the Silver Queen have the habit of going to other locations throughout the city. I don't know if Rosie's spirit is known to do that specifically, but that is something that they say happens. And it's also worth mentioning that silver in and of itself is known like metaphysically to absorb energy. So if there's, silver around the entire town, who's to say that people aren't hopping from location to location, if that makes sense?
I like that. It does make
Definitely
sense.
makes
I've never
sense.
known spirits to actually jump from one place to another. That's actually pretty new to me. And I'm going to try to like make an investigation on that. But I did mention that they do have a 15-foot portrait of a lady in silver. Like literally there's silver dollar coins like plastered on this one big photo or portrait. So that could also, like you were saying, Courtney, it could also be that that's also magnetizing these spirits to come to the hotel. I guess it could possibly be that Rosie's just not the only one haunting the hotel. There could actually be others. She just so happens to be the most well known or well famous out of
Most
all of
active.
them, because like I said, they catch whispers, they catch other voices, they hear footsteps. And I also did mention that Annie is also another ghost that does haunt the hotel. Sadly, I really couldn't find any information on Annie. There was a little bit more on Rosie than there was on this other spirit.
Can I ask?
That's weird. I haven't heard Annie in
Yeah.
any of the investigations that I watched on that place. So that's cool that you brought that up. I'll have to look into that.
I've heard her name in passing, but I don't think that she's very well known. Do you mind me asking though, while we're on the topic of both Rosie and Annie, I know that you said earlier that they're mostly encountered by men, but I want to say that I came across somewhere that Rosie's spirit is sort of jealous of female guests. Did you come across that anywhere, or am I just making that up?
I mean, no, I have not, but it could be possible. But then again, we are talking about prostitutes in the 1800s. Their main focus was on men, and as Farah, I'm so sorry. As Farah mentioned earlier, like there were thousands of miners working, to dig up silver and God knows what else out there. So it makes sense. But Annie, like I said, extremely limited information. I couldn't find enough about her, just like her name coming out like a few times here and there in a couple of pages. And Rosie, just like I said, she just so happens to be the more prominent one out of all of them. But no, I did not come across information about her being jealous. It could be possible.
Yeah.
Like it would make sense, but that
But also at the
she's
same
probably
time,
in the afterlife still thinking she has to be working her way through men or something.
exactly. I mean, that was her livelihood. And let's say, I really do believe that she's intelligent and knows that she's a spirit, but let's say that she's going through the motions of her everyday life in kind of a residual state, then obviously she's going to pay more attention to the male guests because that's her
Of
livelihood.
course, yeah.
I did hear, just like you, Courtney, in passing, like how you said about Annie, about she doesn't like women. I did hear that in passing, that she is not as nice and forthcoming to the women that are in paranormal investigation groups than she is for men. Because I think, again, these ladies' jobs were to charm men. If it was a new client, they would, with the fact that there being hundreds of girls in one saloon, one hotel, they had to fight for that client.
Mhm.
So then they
Exactly.
had to come on charm, be charming and everything. And I did hear that Rosie, like I said, if there was a girl in a group of paranormal investigators, she'd be tugged, she'd be pushed,
Yeah.
but the men were treated, of course, differently because, like I said, that was her livelihood, as you guys mentioned.
Mhm.
That was their life. They were there to do one thing and one thing only:
Yeah,
entertain the guests.
exactly.
Exactly. And I want to say that I heard that on maybe Mackie and Amanda's YouTube channel. We're just shouting out YouTube channels left and right, but I feel like they were there within the last year or so, in that they were not targeted, but for lack of better wording, they weren't getting as many responses as their male counterparts because
I know exactly what you're
yeah,
talking about. I
You know
watched that
what?
episode.
That is true. As you bring that up, Courtney, I didn't think about it, but like when I was watching the two separate videos for the twin paranormal, since they're just mostly a group of guys, they were having like a high case of like um experiences, I guess you can say. I wasn't really too focused on to see if there were, girl investigators doing their own thing with the hotel, but I did notice that these guys were having a really high case of paranormal experiences with, especially with Rosie, since she was the main focus of their project that time.
Right. I remember one of
Let's
them
be
getting
honest.
in the
We would
bathtub.
love to all go there and
I would
investigate.
love
For
to.
real.
But
I'm
yeah,
sorry, Amanda. Go ahead. Or Courtney,
yeah,
go
sorry.
ahead.
I was just saying, I feel like I remember like one of them like sitting in the bathtub and like either EVP or spirit box, but they were communicating with her and her responses were eerie but accurate.
Yep. And I think it was the spirit talker
Yeah, I don't know.
that they
That
used.
investigation, to the listeners at home, if you have not watched that, go and watch it because it's they do a very good job to begin with, but it is a really crazy episode on their
It
channel.
is actually.
Another one is who's that guy? Patrick
The haunted
from the
side,
haunted
yeah,
side. Yep, he lives near
right.
Virginia City. So he's been there several times and yep, same thing too. He sits in the bathtub and he's gotten a lot of responses from Rosie. And I really think as much as I'm thinking back of all the guys that I've watched on YouTube investigate, they do come up with more evidence than the girls. So, and I just don't think those women, that's their domain. If you think about it, they rolled those saloons, those hotels. That was the moneymaker there.
Right. So it's almost like they're having an outsider come in. And so they're going to be almost standoffish. Not that that's what like a female investigator's intentions are, but how else do you expect a sex worker from like, the 1860s, 1870s to, I guess, kind of react to having somebody from 2022, 2023 coming in with all of this equipment and kind of making a show of things, not to talk smack about any creators or investigators, but do you understand what I'm saying? Like I don't know how else they would react because they would just see it as this is a woman coming in on my domain and trying to take clients from me.
I always think about it. I'm right there along with you, not talking smack about anybody that creates on YouTube or the paranormal investigators, but I have just found, well, again, this is my opinion, but recently it just seems like so many people are going in because it fits the trend. That's the trend on YouTube today. And you have to think these people, they were once human beings. They don't want to have someone come in all hours of the day and night, touch this, touch that, say this, say that, and it's you got to come in there with respect. Maybe if I went there, I'd bring some money, I'd bring some flowers and try to treat them as if they were still alive. That's a person. That's a woman just like you and I and Vicky and Amanda. that's that's still one of us. You know
Right.
what I
And
mean?
it's
No matter
also,
what she did.
there
No,
also had to have been super, like, very traumatized. Like, that wasn't an easy life. No one had an easy life back in those days.
no, for sure.
So, yeah.
They were beat too, let's not forget.
Yeah.
They were beat by drunken miners too. But
You know
so
what?
Vicky, is
I
that
like.
everything? Oh,
Yes,
Amanda, go ahead.
ma'am.
I'm sorry.
No, no, I'm totally done. Yes, that was the end of my Silver Queen Hotel. I can go ahead and pass on the torch to whomever wants to go next.
All right. Well, that will be in the next episode. But Amanda, did you have something that you were going to ask or say?
No, I just wanted to put a pin in the conversation about how females tend to be just put a pin. I don't want to give away too much without before my episode, but
Foreshadowing for
the
next
fact
time.
that yeah,
Yep.
the fact that there's disproportionate things that happen between genders just
No, I know exactly where you're going. And yeah, don't say too much because I think I know where you're going with that because I've looked up the Gold Hill too. So as far as tonight, listeners, thank you, Vicky, for your very informational, very detailed history of the Silver Queen and all of its hauntings. You did a fantastic job as always. That was probably better. That's probably the best that you could have done with that because there isn't a lot of detailed history because like you said, not a lot of things were documented back in the day. So for what you
Exactly.
had, my God, you did a phenomenal job letting us know about it. There were things that I learned that I did not know. So thank you for bringing your expertise to this episode in this Virginia City Chronicle.
Oh, thank you for having me on talking about this. I actually had fun discovering some things I had no idea about, especially um, about the discovery of Virginia City. I found it to be very exciting. So I'm actually glad that I had this project, handed down to me to go ahead and do so. I had a good time.
Awesome. So, real quick, Vicky, could you tell everyone where you can be found, your handles, a little bit of info about your podcast, when they drop, where they can be found before we end the episode for tonight?
Yes, so guys, um, as owner of the Mrs. Spooky Obsessed podcast, it's more of an educational, informational type of channel. So if you want to learn about a certain cryptid, I'm more about history. That's what my channel's about. And if you want to learn more about me and my stuff, go to my Instagram page at Mrs. Spooky Obsessed, and I have Linktree included in my bio where all the podcasting apps can be found. The only areas that I'm not included is just Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. But you can look for me on Spotify as at Mrs. Spooky Obsessed Podcast. As long as you have that word podcast included, you'll be able to find me in a heartbeat.
Wonderful. And on the next episode of the Virginia City Chronicles, Amanda from One Nothing Podcast will be covering her building, the Gold Hill Hotel. So stay tuned for the coming date of that episode. We hope you enjoyed tonight's episode about the first, the building in the series of the Virginia City Chronicles, which again, we covered the Silver Queen Hotel. Thank you for joining us. And until next time, cabin crew and amazing listeners, explore your strange.